Hello, my name is Georgianne Ford with the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, and I'm here back with part two of her series, Christine Lombardo-Zaun, our attorney-mediator, started. And we're anxious to hear the whole story. Christine is about the approach and through a child's eyes of from the beginning of finding out their parents are getting divorced, and she's going to take us through the different parts. And she did interviews and has some great information to share with us. So, Christine, thanks for coming back. I think
Thank
today, part two is about after they found out their parents are being divorced, what happened next, right?
Yeah.
Okay. So
I haven't heard anyone ever ask that question. And it's like, I was a child who my parents were married until my mother passed. So I did not have to experience divorce as a child. So I don't know what that feels like. So that was another reason why I wanted to reach out and interview these, I call them kids, but they are young adults. Why I wanted to tap into them, because it's like, I don't know what it feels like, and I don't want to try to pretend to know what it feels like, but I need to know so that I can help others, not hurt any more children or not hurt themselves more than they have to.
I love that you bring that into your work, Christine, because you're always working with the adults, and that everything you learn and can share with us only makes us get a little bit better at this.
Yes. Well, anyone that knows me, I'm all about continuous improvement. So I'm always like, hey, we can do better.
We should get on this topic.
In every aspect of our lives. So, I hear parents telling me how their kids are feeling and what they're going through, because I always ask, I always check in, but it's like, they're probably giving me their version of how their kids are feeling,
Mm-hmm.
And so I tapped into this young adult group, and they've been so gracious and candid with me. And it has just turned into something, I think, therapeutic for them, but even for me as a mediator, because it's giving me a whole different lens with which to look through. So,
and you're sharing that with us, and we thank you.
Yes. So what happened next? So in the first blog, part one, we talked about, what happened when your parents told you were getting divorced, and how did that make you feel? And then I also asked them, the young adults, what advice would you give to these parents who have to tell their kids they're getting divorced? And so caveat number one is every case is different, and keep in mind that this information is being disseminated from young adults. So they're going through a certain stage in life. This might not work for 4th and 5th graders, right? Or middle school aged children. So we just kind of have to keep that in mind. And I don't even know if I could interview kids that young. I don't think that would be appropriate. But what I'm going to do is share some research articles that I find, and I'll share that on my LinkedIn page. One most recently was the psychological effect of divorce on children. Mm-hmm. And so it addresses some of the age differences. But so for this, I asked, what happened next? The parents dropped the bomb, kids were getting divorced. Okay, great. Pass the mashed potatoes. Like what, now what? So I asked that question, and one of the young adults said that they were in college when it happened. And so they actually were trying to think about how to be a good student, how to live away from their parents, how to develop time management skills, and just to get on a schedule as a college student. So they weren't really thinking about it. So they said it wasn't bad because they didn't have to live in that environment. But when they went home for break, that's when things changed, because one parent wasn't there. And it was a bit of a shock for them. Another young adult, also in college, said that they were very involved. So they liked being super busy because it kept their mind off of the divorce. And then I also talked to a young adult who was living in the home with the one parent, and they had a very different outlook. It was hard for them because, they saw one parent move out and they were living with the other parent, yet they were angry with both parents. But, the way this young adult phrased it was like, well, I can't pick on the person I'm living with because I'm dependent on them financially, and I don't want to have a fight with them, but yet I'm angry with them. And unfortunately, their divorce, that child's divorce, their parents, they were not mediation friendly. So you could see the pain in this child's eyes, basically.
So mediation friendly, can you just describe that? I'm not sure we all understand what that.
Yeah. So, when a couple decides to divorce, they have to decide, are they going to litigate or mediate? And litigation is where you hire two separate attorneys and you go to court and you pay a lot of money and you duke it out. Mm-hmm. Even with the most reasonably priced attorneys. If you have two people that want to cut each other's eyes out and punish each other, it's going to cost a lot of money. Mediation is where you have a third party neutral like myself, who is trained in the law, but doesn't take sides. And we come to the table with an understanding that we don't want to duke it out in court. We want to sit like reasonable adults and work everything out, and then hopefully have some money left over to pay for the kids.
So that's mediation friendly, being open to mediation.
Being open and committed to it, mm-hmm. And it, I have other blogs out there and recordings that talk about mediation and talk about, the cost of litigation. People think like, okay, I'll get a lawyer and I'll go litigate. The problem is that you might start with a small retainer, but if there's one bad turn in a divorce, let's say somebody gives you a really crappy appraisal on the house, that lowers the value to an unacceptable level. I mean, that could literally blow up the friendly, amicable divorce. Mm-hmm. Or if one spouse sees that the other spouse started dating, they could be like, all bets are off. So I've seen it over and over again. With mediation, you kind of lay everything on the table. You know what you're going to get. Litigation, it's like you might as well put a blindfold on because you don't know which way it's going to go.
So the parents are more able to emotionally be present for the children. I'm hearing that's what
with mediation.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage, a lot of maturity. It's still hard. Right? Sure. Divorce is hard, mm-hmm. and that's not going to change. The emotional traumas are still there with a lot of my mediation clients, but they're learning how to be aware of it and how to control it for the sake of their kids. So I had then asked the kids how did they feel after the initial shock of being told their parents were being divorced? How did that feel to them? And one of them said, I was so sad that I no longer had a family. And this young adult felt like their family no longer existed. They said everything was different. Sleeping in a new location felt strange to me. I felt very disconnected. I felt like I could not relate to my parents who were now starting their new lives. And I was not sure where I felt in, and I felt like I had no control. That was really, these comments that these young adults made were really, I don't know, for me, they were powerful.
So powerful.
Because, there's a lot of literature out there that, with young adults, especially that feel out of control, Sometimes they resort to some really self-destructive habits, or coping mechanisms that could be fatal. Like some become anorexic, some become bulimic, some cut, or they might start smoking or drinking or doing drugs. I mean,
just the out of control, those feelings of out of control, and where do you put them, even as adults? So we had them as children, and then we have them as adults.
So think about being a young adult for a moment and not having control, feeling disconnected from the two people that you depend on. And you feel like you can't even communicate with them, but yet you rely on them financially in some way, shape, or form. Like it's a really messy situation. And, as a mediator, as a lawyer, as a parent, I feel like, hey, these kids didn't ask for this divorce. They didn't sign up for that. And it's the parent's responsibility. So some parents don't like when I say that, but it's like, you guys are the adults. You're the big kids. And you have to put your big kids on and make decisions that aren't always in your best interest, but are in their best interest. Because you brought them into this world. And they didn't ask for this form of punishment.
Sometimes we need to hear that from an expert, even though we know it. But just having that reminder, I'm sure you give your clients, is helpful. It just kind of refocuses us.
Well, and I think we talked about this in the first video. Parents are busy, and it's not like we try to ignore our kids, but when you're going 500 miles an hour and you're trying to make dinner and finish up a meeting, or you're taking care of pets, you're taking care of household chores, it is very easy to just fall into a routine. But here are these young adults who aren't saying anything because they're afraid to, but yet they need to be heard. They need an outlet, a healthy outlet. Mm-hmm. So literally stopping and maybe taking them for coffee or taking them for ice cream and saying, just the two of them, and saying, I know this is difficult for you. How are you doing? Mm-hmm. And then just let them talk.
Good advice.
So then I asked, what were some of your coping techniques with some of these painful feelings? So one young adult used their roommate, their roommates or their friends to talk to. They said they let them rant. I think that's the word that they use at that age. Someone else said they felt they needed to cry on their own, whereas others were more expressive and cried to their friends. Mm-hmm. This one young adult was like, no, I needed to cry on my own. Someone said they listened to a lot of music. And I was like, oh, well, what kind of music did you listen to? And they said, I did listen to sad music. I listened to sad music. I listened to happy music. I just let the music take me wherever I was going that day. And I liked that because I feel that a lot of kids, they keep so much bottled up, and it's like, it's healthy to express it, and get it out. Someone said they colored, like the mandalas, or just playing coloring books or just doodling. They just sat quietly and colored, and they said that was really soothing. Someone said, because I had asked if any of them had gone to a therapist. There's a lot of great local psychologists, that are there helping people. We have COVID on top of all this. And, some of them said, yes, I had a therapist and it was helpful. But some of the other young adults were like, no, I wasn't ready to go to a therapist. And my parents kept saying, you have to go to a therapist. So one of the pearls that I gathered from that was, if you're a parent and you think therapy is the right answer, maybe wait, and this is for young adults, remember, but maybe give them some space to kind of let them come to you and tell you when they're ready to go to talk to someone. Because a therapist might not work for everybody. You know, some young adults might literally resonate with just music and they can work themselves through it.
Mm-hmm.
Others need some outside help, you know, like friends or a licensed, you know, therapist. Whatever it is, I think you got to let the kids figure that out on their own time frame.
So your guidance would be just try to give them a little space to make that.
Give them space. One of the young adults did say, though, don't be alone. Like, don't go and hide out and just be alone. That's not healthy. And I thought that was kind of mature for a young adult to say, because they realized that being alone wasn't going to help the situation. You know, maybe if you're coloring and whatnot, but this was like, kind of like, don't isolate yourself from the world. So, I took that, I thought about that. And then I was like, okay, so what are some other ways that we, can get help? And they came up with like talking to a priest or minister,
Mm-hmm.
talking to their friends at a youth group or another social club, talking to a relative, or even just playing outside with friends. So maybe like younger kids, that might be a good alternative. Let them go play, set up play dates, let them run around the park a couple times and wear themselves out and, just feel some kind of normalcy. But also ask them, like if it's a young adult, ask them what they want. Ask them what would help them.
Great question.
I think a lot of parents, they're trying to compensate for the shock of telling them they're divorced. But you know what? Kids are pretty resilient, pretty smart. And I think with a young adult who's trying to like really forge their way into adulthood and be independent, I think it's really important to tap into them and ask them what they want.
And I'm just thinking that would be, I know that the support groups for teen support groups for divorce, I know they exist. I think we're working on one through the Alpha Center.
Absolutely. Yep. The Alpha Resource Center. And they're doing a great job with that. I mean, they're offering all kinds of support at different levels. If you're not ready for the group setting, there's resources online that people can just look up and read.
Which is great for kids. I mean, we've got to make sure they're also going through their own transition and we're taking care of them.
Yes. So as I said, I will support this with some, very relevant articles so that we can kind of really dive deep into this and hopefully just help people. And what I would say is if anybody's watching this or reading the blogs and you have a particular question that you want me to ask my interviewees, I can certainly reach out and do that and, keep this discussion going.
That's wonderful. So to contact Christine, it would be calling the Alpha Center for Divorce Mediation, 1-800-310-9085. You can talk to anyone if you have questions or you want to give her a question to ask her interviewees. She'd be happy to accept that. So please reach out.